The divorce papers lay scattered across the table, bold print mocking me. Lisa's lawyer, a woman with a smile too wide, had just finished presenting her opening statement. Then Lisa leaned forward, her voice a stage whisper meant for every ear in the room. He never truly loved me, not like I deserved. The judge's pen paused. I felt the courtroom's gaze, the hot judgment, and her eyes, cold and triumphant, met mine. The fluorescent light hummed in the courthouse bathroom, casting a sickly glow on my face. I slammed the door to the stall, the sound echoing through the empty room. My reflection in the mirror stared back, a hard knot of fury tightening in my jaw. The air was stale, smelling faintly of disinfectant and despair. I braced my hands on the porcelain sink, the cold edge a small comfort. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Mr. Albright, my lawyer, his voice a low, steady rumble. "Mark, we're ready when you are. Just a few more minutes." "Oh," I grunted in response, a non-committal sound. "Yeah, I'll be right out," I said, the words feeling dry in my throat. I didn't want to go back in there, didn't want to face her across the polished conference table again. Last night's memory was a dull ache behind my eyes. Lisa's voice, thick with tears, pleading through the phone line. "Please reconsider, Mark. Is this really how you want to end everything? 18 years just like this?" Her words had hung in the silence, heavy and wet. My reply had been flat, devoid of emotion, a practiced line delivered countless times in my head. "You ended it, Lisa. I'm just making it official." The line had gone dead. I remember the click, the finality of it. I closed my eyes and the memories started to unspool, a reel of old home movies playing behind my eyelids. July 4th, 2005. The smell of charcoal and cut grass. The neighborhood barbecue at the Miller's house. A sea of unfamiliar faces and laughter. I was 28, just starting out at the firm, eager and a little overwhelmed. Then I saw her. Lisa. She was wearing a light blue sundress, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, laughing with a group of friends near the picnic tables. Her laugh was bright, almost musical, and it drew me in. A stray frisbee, thrown too high, too hard, arced across the yard. It clipped the edge of a plastic plate held by someone standing near Lisa, sending a dollop of strawberry shortcake splattering down the front of her dress. She let out a small gasp, then another bright laugh. I found myself walking over, a clean napkin in my hand, and offering. "Looks like you lost a battle with dessert, or so," I'd said, a clumsy attempt at humor. She'd smiled, her green eyes crinkling at the corners. That was our first real conversation, surrounded by the chaos and joy of a summer holiday. 6 months later, on a cold Christmas Eve walk through the town square, I proposed. She said yes, her breath fogging in the crisp air. We married the following spring, a small ceremony in her parents' sprawling backyard. Brenda, Lisa's twin sister, stood beside her as maid of honor, looking so much alike it was disorienting. Dale, my college roommate and closest friend, sat in the front row, a quiet witness to a future we thought was certain. We built a life, brick by brick, a modest Tudor house on Maple Street, the kind with good bones and a solid foundation. I worked hard, pulling long hours, and eventually made partner at the firm. Lisa taught high school English, her passion for literature contagious to her students. Our son, Kevin, arrived in 2008, a sturdy, serious boy who loved baseball more than anything. 3 years later, the twins, Grace and Nora, completed our family, two tiny blonde forces of nature. Our life felt full then, complete in a way I hadn't known was possible. 18 years. It was a long time, a lifetime really, before she destroyed it. The first crack in the pavement wasn't a sudden fissure, but a slow, almost imperceptible shift. It was last May, during Kevin's Saturday afternoon baseball game. The sun was hot on the bleachers, the air thick with the smell of popcorn and freshly cut grass. Lisa was late, as she often was, but something felt different that day. She slid onto the bench beside me, pulling out her phone almost immediately. Her thumbs tapped away, a small smile playing on her lips. Her eyes, when she looked up from the screen, seemed a little too bright, a little too distant. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed, I walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. Lisa was hunched over her laptop at the kitchen island, the screen casting a pale glow on her face. The moment she heard my footsteps, The lid snapped shut with a decisive click. "Just browsing," she said, her voice a little too quick, a little too loud. The air in the kitchen, usually so familiar, suddenly felt thick with an unspoken secret. It was a feeling I couldn't shake. Over the next few weeks, the small, unsettling moments began to string together, forming a pattern I couldn't ignore. Lisa's phone calls grew more frequent, her voice dropping to a near whisper whenever I entered the room. She'd excuse herself, stepping out onto the porch or into the pantry, the door clicking shut behind her. Her absences became more common too. "Just running errands," she'd say, or "meeting a friend for coffee." But the errands seemed to take longer, and the friends were always vague, never named directly. A small unease began to settle in my gut, a quiet churning that refused to go away. Brenda and Dale, our closest friends, started showing up more often. They'd sit with Lisa at the kitchen table, their heads bent close, voices low and serious. The moment I walked into the room, a sudden, unnatural silence would fall. Their eyes would dart from Lisa to me, a flicker of something unreadable passing between them. The conversation would resume, but the topic would always shift, abruptly, to school schedules or Kevin's latest baseball statistics. It felt like walking into the middle of a secret, time and again. One Tuesday evening, I came home a little later than usual, the fluorescent glow from the kitchen window cutting a rectangle into the dim twilight. I pushed open the back door and found Lisa and Brenda at the kitchen island, a stack of papers spread out between them. They were bent over the documents, their expressions tight. The instant I stepped inside, Lisa's hand shot out, sweeping the papers into a neat pile. She tucked them under a magazine, her movements quick, almost furtive. "Hey, Mark," Brenda said, her voice a touch too casual, a smile pasted on her face. "Just helping Lisa sort through some boring paperwork. Retirement accounts, you know how it is." She waved a hand dismissively. Lisa nodded, avoiding my gaze, her eyes fixed on the magazine cover. "Yeah, just a pile of numbers," Lisa added, her voice a little strained. My stomach tightened. The glances they exchanged were too quick, too knowing. It wasn't about retirement accounts. I felt it, a cold certainty. Sleep became a fractured thing. One night, around 2 in the morning, I woke to the distinct glow of the computer screen spilling from the crack under the home office door. Lisa wasn't beside me. I slid out of bed, my feet silent on the hardwood floor, and pushed the door open a crack. She was hunched over the desktop, her silhouette bathed in the pale light, her fingers scrolling rapidly. The screen showed a medical website, a block of text about procedures and options. She startled, her head snapping up. The mouse clicked, and the screen instantly changed to a generic news site, headlines about global events. "Mark, what are you doing up?" she asked, her voice a jumpy whisper. "Couldn't sleep," I mumbled, trying to make my presence seem accidental. "Me neither," she said, her eyes wide. "Just checking emails. You know, late-night thoughts." Her explanation felt thin, translucent. As I turned to leave, a small, glossy brochure on the corner of her desk, partially hidden by a stack of files, caught my eye. The bold lettering on the cover read, "Family Fertility Center." The words seemed to jump out at me in the dim light, chilling me more than the cold air in the house. Family fertility. We had decided, after the twins, that our family was complete. 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls. That was it. We were done. Why would she be looking at a fertility center? The cold feeling that had started in my stomach now spread through my chest, tightening around my lungs. The next day, while Lisa was teaching, I went into the home office. The brochure was gone. I checked under the files, behind the monitor, in the waste bin. Nothing. My suspicions solidified. I sat down at her computer, my fingers hovering over the mouse. It felt wrong, a violation, but the unease had festered too long. I clicked on her email icon. It opened to her inbox. My eyes scanned the list, then landed on a name. Dr. Sharon Hayes, Riverside Fertility Associates. There were several messages. I clicked on the most recent. The subject line read, "Regarding your upcoming appointment in preparation for the procedure." My breath caught in my throat. That evening, the smell of sautéed onions and garlic filled the kitchen. A false comfort. Lisa stood at the stove, stirring a pot of pasta sauce, her back to me. The familiar domestic scene felt like a stage set. ready for a play I hadn't rehearsed. I walked in, my hands clenched at my sides. Lisa, I started, my voice tight. She hummed a little, not turning around. Is there something medical you haven't been telling me? She froze. The wooden spoon, suspended midair above the simmering pot, dripped a thin stream of red sauce. Her shoulders tensed. What do you mean, Mark? She asked, her voice a little too light, a little too innocent. I mean the fertility clinic brochure, I said, my voice rising a notch. And Dr. Hayes's emails, the ones about your upcoming appointment and preparation for the procedure. Her back was still to me, but I saw her shoulders drop, her knuckles white around the spoon. A flush crept up the back of her neck, darkening her skin. She turned slowly, her face red, her eyes narrowed. You went through my things? The accusation was sharp, a shield. I was worried, I retorted, the words spilling out. Your strange behavior, the hushed phone calls, the secretive meetings with Brenda and Dale, the closed laptop. For weeks, Lisa, for weeks I've been worried sick. What else was I supposed to think? She sighed, a long, exasperated sound, and placed the spoon down with a clatter. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, her movements slow and deliberate. No, I'm not sick, she admitted, her gaze fixed on the countertop. I was going to tell you. Once everything was finalized, she looked up then, her eyes pleading. You should sit down, Mark. I didn't sit. My legs felt like concrete, rooted to the spot. Tell me what? Brenda and Dale, she began, her voice softer now, almost fragile. You know how long they've been trying. The miscarriages, the failed treatments. It's been hell for them, Mark. You've seen it. I nodded slowly, the pieces starting to click into place with a sickening clarity. And you volunteered, I said, the words barely a whisper, to be their surrogate. She nodded, her gaze firm now, resolute. I'm her twin, Mark. We share the same DNA. It makes sense. I'm the ideal surrogate. The ideal surrogate? My voice exploded, cracking through the kitchen's false calm. And when were you planning to tell me, Lisa? After you were already pregnant? After you were carrying another man's child inside of you? She flinched, her eyes dropping. I wanted to make sure I was a viable candidate first. It's a lengthy process, Mark. All the tests, the consultations. I didn't want to upset you until I knew for sure. Upset me? I repeated incredulously. The word felt too small, too insignificant. Upset me, Lisa. You're planning to carry another man's child, biologically Brenda and Dale's, but in your body. And you didn't think that warranted a conversation with your husband? I'm just the vessel, she protested, her voice rising in defense. It's Brenda and Dale's baby, genetically. It will look like them, be like them. That's not the point, I shouted, slamming my hand on the counter. The salt shaker jumped. This is about your body, our marriage, our family. You didn't think I deserved any input? Any say in this massive decision? Her eyes flared, a flash of her own anger. I knew you'd react like this, Mark. This is exactly why I wanted to wait. Why I wanted to make sure it was a definite plan before I brought it up. How far along are you? I demanded, my voice raw. How far into this plan are you, Lisa? She hesitated, her gaze flicking away, then back to mine. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Finally, she exhaled, the sound of defeat. The embryo transfer is scheduled for next month. The kitchen seemed to tilt around me. Next month, I repeated, my voice hollow, the words tasting like ash. Next month, and you're just telling me now? The fury drained out of me, replaced by a cold, aching disbelief. Please, Mark, try to understand, Lisa pleaded, stepping closer, her hand reaching out for my arm. Brenda is desperate. They've been through so much. This is their last chance. And I cut her off before her hand could touch me. Desperate? What about our children, Lisa? Kevin, Grace, Nora? Have you thought about them watching their mother pregnant with their cousin? How do you explain that? Mommy's carrying Aunt Brenda and Uncle Dale's baby. She pulled back her hand, her expression hardening. Of course, I've thought of it all. They're older now. We'd explain it properly as a family. I laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no humor. There is no we in this decision, Lisa. You made it all on your own. You and Brenda and Dale. I was just supposed to be the last to know. I took a step back, putting distance between us. I didn't lie, she insisted, her voice tight. Lies of omission are still lies, I snapped back, the words a sting. I need some time to think, I said, my voice flat, devoid of argument. I didn't wait for her response, didn't look back at her as I walked out of the back door, got into my truck and drove, aimlessly, for hours. The highway lights blurred past, the radio a low thrum of static. My mind raced, circling the same impossible fact. My wife, pregnant with another man's child. I returned to a dark, silent house. The street lights cast long shadows through the windows. Inside, Lisa was curled up on the couch, a blanket pulled tight around her. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She didn't move when I walked in, just watched me with a vacant stare. Kevin asked where you went, she said, her voice raspy. I told him it was a work emergency. A work emergency, another lie, another omission. It piled onto the others. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight, I said, the words hanging heavy in the air. It was the first time in 18 years of marriage I'd said anything like it. I saw her flinch, a slight, almost imperceptible movement, but I saw it. As I started up the stairs, the quiet creak of each step amplifying the silence between us, a thought struck me. I paused, my hand on the banister. Did they ask you, I asked, turning to face her. Brenda and Dale, did they ask you to do this, or was it your idea? She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. The silence stretched, tense and full of unspoken things. It was my suggestion, she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. But they were desperate, Mark. Truly desperate. The next few weeks were a cold war. We maintained a careful facade for the kids, a veneer of normalcy at the dinner table, during school drop-offs or at weekend activities. But the moments alone were brittle, filled with an unbearable tension. Our conversations were minimal, clipped, and intense, like surgical incisions. I continued to sleep in the guest room, citing a vague back problem, a convenient excuse. In the quiet hours, I researched. Surrogacy, medical procedures, legal implications, emotional toll. The internet became my constant companion. I read articles, forums, scientific papers. The more I read, the more convinced I became that Lisa hadn't fully considered the emotional, psychological, or relational implications of what she was planning, not just for her, but for me, for our children, for our marriage. It felt like a reckless dive into uncharted waters. One night I found her in the kitchen, standing by the sink, lost in thought. I walked in, a stack of printed articles in my hand. They were mostly medical journals, psychological studies on surrogacy's impact on couples. Here, I said, placing them on the counter between us. Some information. I corrected myself immediately, my voice flat. Not reasons why surrogacy is a terrible idea, just information. Lisa glanced at the stack of articles I'd placed on the counter. Her lips tightened. I've done my own research, Mark, she said, her voice even, controlled. I understand the risks, both medical and emotional. She didn't pick up a single page. She then went on, her voice softening, almost pleading. Brenda is my twin, my sister. This isn't just a favor, Mark. This is family, a sacred duty. She was looking at me, but her eyes held a distant, resolute light, as if she were talking to herself, reaffirming her decision. An insurmountable wall seemed to rise between us, built brick by brick, with her stubbornness, with her unwavering commitment to a choice she had made without me. The emotional chasm widened, deepening with every word. The next morning, a subtle clue. I found a note from her principal, tucked under a pile of mail on the kitchen counter, confirming her approved leave for personal reasons. She had already arranged for time off from school for the procedure. Without a word to me, without my input, the realization hit me like a physical blow. The decision was not just made, it was already in motion. I made one final, desperate appeal that night. We stood in the living room, the muted television glow casting long shadows. Lisa, I began, my voice raw, our marriage vows, remember them? For better or worse, this is a decision that affects us fundamentally. It affects Kevin, Grace, Nora. Have you considered the emotional toll on them? On us? I tried to keep my voice calm, reasonable, but I could feel the tremor of desperation in my chest. She crossed her arms, a defensive posture. "You're being selfish, Mark," she said, her voice cold. "You can't see the bigger picture. This isn't just about us. This is about helping my sister, giving her the one thing she wants more than anything." She shook her head, her gaze dismissive. "I thought you'd understand." The embryo transfer proceeded as scheduled. I didn't go with her. I couldn't. The day passed in a haze, each hour feeling like a lead weight pressing down on me. A profound sense of abandonment settled in, a deep, bitter betrayal. It felt as though she had irrevocably chosen another path, another life, over ours. A future where I was not just secondary, but irrelevant. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that my marriage was truly over. The realization wasn't a sudden explosion, but a quiet, chilling acceptance. The next day, I called Mr. Albright. The phone felt heavy in my hand. "I need to start divorce proceedings," I told him, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. Mr. Albright listened gravely, his voice a low hum on the other end. He outlined the complex legal and emotional landscape of such a divorce case, especially with the surrogacy woven into its fabric. His words were precise, methodical, laying out the difficult road ahead. I understood. I was ready. Then came the agonizing process of telling the children. Kevin, Grace, and Nora. I sat them down in the living room, the same place Lisa and I had had our final futile argument. I chose my words carefully, omitting the painful, complicated details of the surrogacy. "Mommy and Daddy are going to live in separate houses," I told them, my voice breaking slightly. "We'll always be your parents, and we both love you very much." Their reactions were a fresh layer of grief on my already shattered world. Kevin, always the stoic one, just nodded, his eyes wide and unblinking. Grace, usually so cheerful, buried her face in my side, silent tears wetting my shirt. Nora, the youngest, looked up at me with profound confusion, her little brow furrowed. "But why, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small. "Why can't we all be together?" Their confusion, sadness, and fear were a heavy burden, a consequence of choices I hadn't made, but was now living with. For anyone still listening, stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The morning the divorce papers were served, the air in the house felt thick, like storm clouds gathering. Lisa's initial shock quickly morphed into a desperate mix of anger and renewed pleas for reconciliation. "How could you do this, Mark?" she'd screamed, her face blotchy, tears streaming down her cheeks. "After all these years? For this?" She tried to touch me, to pull me back, but I stood firm. Mr. Albright's advice echoed in my head. "Remain stoic, Mark. Focus on the future. Focus on the kids." I kept my voice level, emotionless. "The trust is gone, Lisa. There's nothing left to reconcile." My words were clipped, precise, designed to offer no room for argument, no flicker of hope. Word of our impending divorce spread through Oak Hills like wildfire. It was a close-knit suburb, the kind where everyone knew everyone else's business before breakfast. Grocery store aisles became minefields of awkward encounters. Neighbors would offer saccharine smiles, their eyes darting away quickly. Whispers followed me at the hardware store, at Kevin's baseball practices. It felt like living under a microscope, every move judged, every silence interpreted. Brenda and Dale, true to form, attempted to intervene. "Mark, you're making a huge mistake," Brenda had said, cornering me at Kevin's parent-teacher conference. "Lisa just wanted to help her sister. It was a beautiful act of love." Dale stood beside her, nodding gravely. Their unsolicited advice only chafed, further complicating the already strained family dynamics. They couldn't see, or refused to see, the betrayal. They only saw a man abandoning his wife over a noble gesture. The children, meanwhile, were anchors in a churning sea. Kevin, usually so open, became withdrawn. His grades, once consistently good, started to slip. He'd spend hours alone in his room, the door closed, music muffled. Grace and Nora, younger, acted out in their own ways. Snapping at each other, arguing over trivial things, their usual easy laughter replaced by sharp words. Their behavior was a mirror, reflecting the turmoil that had fractured our home. In court, I presented a calm, unyielding front. Inside, though, the weight of 18 years of shared life felt like a lead ball in my gut, dragging me down. Lisa's lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Jennings, argued her client's good intentions, painting Lisa as a selfless martyr. She questioned my unreasonable reaction to what she framed as a profound act of love and generosity. She made it sound as if I was the villain, incapable of empathy. The legal battles dragged on, a slow, grinding process that drained both our finances and our emotional reserves. Each court date, each motion filed, each deposition peeled back another layer of our private pain, turning it into a public spectacle. The details of the surrogacy, once a secret, were now laid bare in legal documents, scrutinized by strangers. I grappled with the societal judgment, the sideways glances, the murmured assumptions. It was a heavy cost, standing firm against a betrayal that so many saw as an act of kindness. But I couldn't compromise. Not on this, the fundamental breach of trust, the unilateral decision to bring another child into the world through her body, irrevocably altered the landscape of our marriage. I recognized the bitter reality of what lay ahead. Co-parenting with a woman who had fundamentally violated the deepest trust between us. The judge's gavel fell with a sharp, decisive crack. Divorce granted. I felt no victory, only a hollow emptiness where a life once stood. The Tudor house, once a symbol of our dreams, was sold, its memories dismantled piece by strangers. Lisa moved into a smaller place across town, her teaching salary now her sole income. The practicalities of single motherhood etched on her tired face. The surrogacy journey for Brenda and Dale continued, a constant, painful reminder for me and the children of the choices that shattered our family. Kevin left for college, a quiet relief in his eyes, escaping the lingering tension and heartbreak of his childhood home. Grace and Nora struggled with divided loyalties, carrying the invisible scars of their parents' broken marriage. I rebuilt my life slowly, focusing on my career and being a steadfast presence for my daughters, learning to live with the quiet ache of loss. I would see Lisa occasionally at school events, a strained politeness replacing our intimacy. Brenda and Dale's family was now complete, but at the irreparable cost of my 18-year union with Lisa. I reflected on the price paid for Lisa's act of selfless betrayal, a price that reverberated through everyone connected to us. Some wounds, I understood, never truly heal. Yet life, like the relentless turning of seasons across the Midwestern plains, still moved on, demanding endurance. The lingering question remained, a silent weight. Was the moral justification truly worth the widespread destruction? I carried the answer in my enduring silence. The judge's gavel fell, a final sharp crack that sealed the end of 18 years. There was no sense of victory, only a hollow space where a life had once been. The Tudor house on Maple Street, once filled with the echoes of our children, was sold. Its memories were systematically dismantled by movers and new owners. Lisa moved into a smaller place, her teaching salary her sole income. The weight of single motherhood visibly etched on her face during our brief, strained encounters. Brenda and Dale's surrogacy journey continued. Each milestone was a quiet, painful reminder of the choices that had shattered our family. Kevin left for college, a tangible relief in his eyes as he escaped the lingering tension. Grace and Nora, still young, carried the invisible scars of divided loyalties, their childhood reshaped by absence. I focused on my career, on being a steadfast presence for my daughters, slowly rebuilding a life around the quiet ache of loss. When I saw Lisa at school events, a strained politeness was all that remained of our intimacy. Brenda and Dale's family was complete, but at the irreparable cost of what Lisa and I had built. The price paid for her selfless betrayal reverberated through us all. Some wounds, I understood, never truly heal. Yet life, like the relentless turning of seasons across the Midwestern plains, demanded endurance. The lingering question remained, a silent weight. Was the moral justification truly worth the widespread destruction? I carried the answer in my enduring silence.